Hi everybody. As Nurana mentioned, my name is Bakhtiyar Aslanov. I'm currently working for Berghof Foundation, which is based in Berlin, as a national coordinator of the Oral History and Memory project in Azerbaijan. Um, I have done my bachelor in Azerbaijan and master in Sweden on peace and conflict studies as a Rotary Peace Fellow. I'm happy to be here. Uh, yeah, to share our experiences, our um, knowledge that we have allocated in last uh, few years. Um, yeah, that's all I think. Rana, I don't know if you have other specific questions I can answer.
No, I think we can go directly to the main topic of
Yes.
today, and I will share my screen. I will make the notes while you're talking so that
Yeah.
we don't miss any information. And if it's possible, you just can talk maybe a bit louder so we
Yeah.
hear you better. Okay, great. Then I will share my screen right now with you, and we can follow the structures that I have here. So we got to know already you bacteria bit.
Yes.
And yeah, I will start from the first questions that we have. So, what is actually oral history and why is it important?
Uh, so I think in order to look at this, let's say, correlation between oral history and conflict resolution components, we have to first look at the oral history, as you highlighted the right question. Oral history is a method of conducting, let's say, historical research through recordings or recorded interviews among different respondents. These respondents might be ordinary people or people who have taken part in specific important events. Um, Oral history, let's say, is very important because oral history enables mainly ordinary people to share their stories by themselves. And sometimes people confuse and they mix oral history with storytelling, but oral history is not storytelling at all. And oral history helps people to, as I mentioned, to share their opinions, and not opinions, also like their memories related to the event that happened around themselves. And it also kind of empower people to be heard in a different platforms. Um, and also oral history is also, I would say, that the very important component in research. It's because by doing oral history, like scholars or practitioners try to, let's say, take the primary sources, primary data about the specific event. And this is oral history is also important because there are a lot of events that happened are not recorded in official documents or official I don't know, or non-oral history books or other, I don't know, studies. And oral history helps us to kind of preserve these facts, evidences, and to let's say deliver to the next generation that who are not part of that event, or who hasn't taken part in that event.
Right.
Of course, yeah. Do you have any question?
No, I didn't. I don't. Just keeping a note for the documentation and for like following you better. And
Yeah.
I actually come to another question on how actually you manage to work with oral history. So you're collecting the stories from people, and therefore my next question is actually how then you work with the oral history as a kind of a product, and what actually is the
Yeah.
methodology about itself.
Yes, oral history again is very important, as I mentioned, as also as well as a very sensitive, let's say, activity uh, itself. Uh, as a Berghof Foundation, we mainly work in different regions, mainly in the Caucasus, like Georgian Abkhazian conflict, Armenian, Azerbaijani conflict, or Balkans. And we mainly collect the data or the biographic interviews from ordinary people who have had the direct contacts uh, or who have had taken part in certain events. Of course, first process is taking this audio biographic interviews about these people. We don't have, let's say, specific questions. We have directions. We ask the main question, and the first and the main question is, tell us about your story from the beginning up to now, and that the person start to share his or her opinion and memories about the event. And this is the first, let's say, step. Of course, there are also other steps which takes part before the interview, but I don't want to go to the details like preparation, technical support, and everything. But then we have our own methodology to work with this, let's say, biographic interviews or oral history uh, materials. According to our methodology, I mean, we divide this that full interview into several episodes, but according to several criteria. In these criteria, it includes facts, emotion, or assessment or attribution, as well as reevaluation and message. These are the four components of the let's say the biographic interviews or oral history. And then we, according to these criteria, we produce these materials as an audio as well as written text. We call it like transcripts. We transcribe them, and then we bring this material into the public discussions. And we involve different target groups, either ex-combatants, ex-militants, or IDPs, or refugees, or youth, males or females. I mean, we don't have, let's say, any censorship, but we mainly try to focus on the details of the episodes, and we try to understand what has happened in a certain context and why it happened. And it helps the audience to look at the case from, let's say, critical perspective. We also can call it like critical thinking skills. But in another words, I would say the oral history is very helpful to fight, or I don't know, maybe the fighting is not a good term, but kind of fight with the collective memory, because as a member of the community or the society that we belong, we have been surrounded by different collective memories, and these collective memories help us to let's say to identify our realities, our identities, But in a conflict zone or conflict affected societies or communities, this collective memory is very, I would say, problematic at some points. And oral history helps us to fight with this collective memory and bring alternative memories, because these collective memories are mainly designed by the governments or very, let's say, big entities in that societies. I mean, textbooks, history books, but the oral history helps us to question this and go to the details, and that's why it's very important. Yeah.
So it means that, Bakhtiyar, the methodology that you have, it's not about trauma healing, it's not about like therapy, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, sometimes even we also hear these questions in our audience that, okay, this is the trauma healing process. No, because trauma healing process is totally different, and I would say even more difficult process, because we are not specialized, and we have to be trained in trauma healing. This is not a trauma healing, but it also helps the respondents to share their kind of again emotions.
That's actually was one of the sorry. This actually was one of my next question. How you actually work with this emotion, like how to make conservative people to talk about such taboo topics. I know how it's hard, and yeah, if you share maybe some rules that you follow for this, it would be great.
I mean, the main and first rule is to have empathy about the topic that you are involved within the framework of oral history, and at some point you have to be familiar with the whole context, and at the same time, if you want to be involved in this oral history, you also have to, or you should try to get familiar with the background of the respondent that you are gonna, let's say, meet and interview that person, because again, especially oral history and conflict, it's very hard topic, and you have to also control your emotions. You should be neutral or impartial. You should express your empathy, not by words, but not only by words, but also like with your gestures, your let's say body language, shortly. And when you collect this data, I mean oral history or interviews, if you fail in the beginning, like a few times, it doesn't mean that you are not a successful, let's say, interview, because it's. I mean, these people have been traumatized, and you have to be careful not to be hurt, but also not to hurt your respondent. That's the first, the main, the goal. And plus, we, as an interview, when you go, you have to get prepared, as I told, like with the background. At the same time, when you, let's say, meet that person, you should inform that person as much as you can, as much as you have information about the process, how this material is going to be used. We can call it as either like, or let's say agreement or written agreement between the interviewer and interview respondent, because it's very important, and you should think a lot of things like emotional parts, technical parts, quality, and everything, because then you bring this topic like into a bigger audience. This is, I mean, what we do, like we mainly, after producing this material, we gather people, not more than 10 people, not less than 5 people, because like, let's say we divide between 3-5 minutes each episodes, and that discussion takes like hours, really, like 2, 3, maybe sometimes 4 hours, and we analyze. And as a facilitator who also organizes these workshops with the episodes, it's his or her responsibility to protect the respondent. Of course, we get an agreement, as I told in the beginning. That person might be might prefer to be anonymous. Then we only, of course, we code everything, but then we don't write the name of this person, because we have to follow the instruction or the agreement or contract that we got between us and the respondent. We should follow this process even in the, let's say, the discussion process. The next step, we also let's say invite at some point invite respondents to get interact with the bigger audience in front of the big audience, not only for a recorder. And it helps the participants or the audience to ask different questions that we don't ask when we take the interviews, because we are not allowed to direct or redirect the respondent to, you know, we are, I mean, this social sciences is a little bit difficult field, and we are individuals and we have our own interests sometimes, and there are a lot of interesting topics that we might ask the questions according to our personal need or like interest, and these are the criteria.
Yeah. And Bakhtiyar, using a few less minutes of our speech, I just want to actually mention one thing, that as I see, the safety and security is really preserved in your work. And I think this was the reason why when I asked you to share maybe some photos from the discussions or the audios, you said that it's not possible because you have to preserve this and you cannot make it open to big public. And I understood like how this fact is really playing an important role in your work, and it's great really, because people can really trust and rely on you that you keep the full security and safety of them. And actually, I know that this is a quite long-lasting methodology, and if you just can share a few words where at the moment in the world this methodology has been applied, it would be great to know.
I mean, let's say, as I agree totally with you that you know, we have to respect the rules that we have drawn with the respondents, and this is our responsibility to protect. Even during the discussions, we are not allowed to, let's say, let the audience to attack like the personal image of or reputation of that person. But what I want to say that these materials can be used in different, let's say, in different contexts. Of course, oral history has its disadvantages, like, but when you collect the pool of the interviews, it helps us to use these materials in different research, I don't know, different types of study things. But mostly, if I answer your latest question, one of the biggest this oral history, let's say, the project is the United States Holocaust Memorial Museums, Jeff and Toby Harry Oral History, the process, and oral history also helps us to kind of let's say to shape the history or to reshape the history that written, let's say, written
in the past. That's well said, really. That's really very well said. I really love this forming. Like oral history helps to reshape the history that was written in the past.
Yeah, but in Western society, the oral history materials have been used. I don't know, by Greek historians. Yeah, I mean, even like there are a lot of sites or projects or museums after the Second World War. I mean, it's a huge, let's say, the field, to put it in brief.
I see. Thank you very much, Bakhtiyar, really for this insightful explanation. So if you let me just wrap up what you said and paraphrase, and then you say if I understood it right or not. So you find the people who were touched by the conflict, lived in the conflict zone, and have been impacted by it, and you take the interview from them by asking just one question: tell your story.
Yeah.
And after they tell the story, you just make out of this the product, which is the transcript and audios. Then you put it on the public discussion with a group of 5 to 10 people. And through the facilitation, you try to boost the critical thinking in your audios. And normally it's like they vary from like militarians to like young people to all people know the stuff. So through this, you reshaping the history and asking people to look at everything from a different perspective. And that's a really, I would say, amazing methodology. I would wish just to be part of the group and dive deeper into this process. But right now, I'm actually ready to ask the audience if there's any questions that you would like to ask. And please open your microphone or video and share your question, or just simply you can write it in the chat. If you have any kind of question to Bakhtiyar, maybe some specific questions that you would like to specify with our speaker. Meanwhile, thank you very much, Bakhtiyar, for this broad and simple explanation of such a complex methodology in general. Yeah, and yeah, we are waiting for some questions if you have, but if you don't, I also can understand this. Maybe it was so clear that there were no questions because the speech itself was also based on the questions. We can wait for 1 more minute to get your questions, and in case if we don't, we will move to the practical part of our workshop. Yeah, I remind you that you can use the chat below. Okay. And actually, if you are with us right now, maybe, yeah, great. Christina has a question. Meanwhile, hi, Christine, it was great to see you. Thanks for sharing the approach of Berghof. Can this approach be scaled, or results of it adapted to be used on a wider scale or for a different target groups? So what's the scale of it, and can it be used on different target groups?
Oh, thank you so much, Christine, for the great question and appreciating our activities. We really, as a Berghof family, we really try to do our best to, let's say, to catch everything that we can. Because why I'm starting from this, I will explain it. Because the collecting, especially oral history, is very important, and we don't have too much time to lose, because these people, I mean, that we collect, or we call them as our respondents, naturally they pass away and they take all their stories with themselves, which is unwritten, and this is nowadays we try to collect this, let's say, these materials, and also like to use in different several groups. Maybe it's a small scale, but in the future we plan to do this. And plus, there, I mean, especially oral history and conflict is a little bit tricky point, because at some point when the conflict starts, or just after the conflict, you can't collect these materials. But at the same time, you shouldn't be late. It's a little bit, as I said, I mean, it's a little bit sensitive moments. We plan to use, if I answer your question shortly, we plan to, let's say, to adapt these materials in a wider scale. But this is our future plan in the places that we are working. Yeah.
Great.
But
And
I hope I managed to answer your questions.
I hope so too, and I think so. And one maybe last question will come from my side, because I'm very curious. Have you ever tried to apply this methodology with a mixed group? So, for instance, if these are people from two conflicting countries and both of them are there and discussing one interview.
Okay, of course. This is our next and very interesting step, because oral history, as I said in the beginning, is an alternative history or approach to the topic. But in the next level, we kind of try to bring these stories, because it's kind of a coin. That the coin has two sides. Let's say if we collect one story from the other side, and we're sure that there is another side of or another similar stories on the same topic, and we bring them together and we discuss it. And this also helps us to see how the people narrate, let's say, their stories or the events that happen around them, or how they see, or how they saw, or perceived, or how they analyzed, and at the same time, it also helps us to see how the currently involved audience can react, can analyze, and where it takes us. This methodology, one of the uniqueness of this methodology is the involvement of the grassroots level, or grassroots people in the process. That's one of the, I would say, the strengths of this process. It's not top-down, it's a bottom-up approach, that people take part in the process, or people make decisions in the process that they are involved. I mean, they deal with their own issues by themselves. Yes.
Great. I wish to just observe how this process goes on, and I can just imagine how it might be tense and complex. So, yeah, I just want to wish the best of luck to you and your team back there is in the great work that you're doing. And I'm sure like these steps are those big steps that will lead us to the peaceful futures that we want to live in, and say no to conflicts and resolve them in a more constructive way. So thank you very much for accepting our invitation and sharing this methodology with us. I'm sure that there are many people out there as me who really thinking right now like how I can apply this in my community. And yeah, wish you best of luck.
Thank you so much for your invitation. It was really my honor for me to take part in this session and share our experience